Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my Vita retrospective for 2019, the last retrospective I'm expecting in the Vita series. Well, kind of the last one in this main series. We'll get to that more in a bit. But right now, 4 physical releases for the Vita this year. All interesting, but no real exclusives. 3 games that came out on the Switch last year physically, and a game that was also released on PS4. We'll get to those. Let's get right into this year for the Vita. What a surprising year because of, I don't know of another system that's ever gone out like this. The Vita really died with a whimper, and I think in some cases it died before publishers were ready for it to die, and Sony pulled the plug. This thing has been around for a long time. It's actually had a really serviceable lifetime, I think, just based on its fans alone, just based on the strength of its kind of exclusive visual novels and niche RPGs. But Sony just said we're not producing the carts anymore, which is the first time I've ever heard of that kind of thing happening, where there's, I guess, no third party that can produce the carts, as far as I know. So all of these different publishers had to rush in and get their orders in and use up the remaining allotment of Vita cartridges. And there were fights with different publishers about, I know there were issues with Limited Run specifically having a problem getting the allotments of carts they needed because they had so many games lined up. They are still publishing games to come out. I know I have one Kickstarter that has promised Vita physical versions. That's the only reason I got it. So they have said they've worked with, I think, East Asia Soft to get that out. I hope that's coming, but you never know with those. And after that, I don't know if a third-party publisher is going to be allowed to produce those cartridges or can produce them for whatever reason. So this may be the end of the Vita. Just what a sad way for this amazing console to go. So yeah, let's just get right into the games that came out this year. First up is Code Realize Wintertide Miracles. A strange follow-up to the previous Code Realize Otome visual novel that's really only for the most hardcore fans. While the story was already wrapped up in the first game, and that first follow-up added more depth and epilogues, this release is basically just fan service for readers who want to spend a bit more time with the romantic interests in the game. It includes new short scenarios that take place during and after the first game, has epilogues for 2 of the original paths, and features winter and Christmas themed events. It also has a strange triangulate system, where the player takes 2 of the guys on a date at a time, and I think basically watches them argue over who likes the main character more. The main draw here is a new scenario starring the mysterious Cantarella character that fills in her storyline. Next, we get 3 titles, all released by NIS America as their last kind of push for the Vita. 3 games that were released on other consoles earlier, but yeah, the first one is The Lost Child. This game takes place in the same universe as El Shaddai, which was a stylish, religiously themed third-person action game from last gen. This time, however, the game is a first-person dungeon crawler with turn-based battles similar in gameplay to something like Etrian Odyssey. The game takes place in modern Tokyo, where the main character is an occult journalist. Gameplay switches between doing investigations in the city and then exploring the strange dungeon that exists between 2 worlds. It was also released on the Switch and PS4, and we'll cover it more in a multi-platform episode. The Longest 5 Minutes is next. We talked about this on the Switch last year. This is a Vita port of that retro-style RPG where the main character gets amnesia during the final boss fight and has to live through flashbacks of his entire adventure, where the choices you make then affect the battle he's in. Penny Punching Princess is next. This is a port of the unique top-down action RPG that was also released on Switch last year. This game features light strategy elements where you use cash to bribe enemies, activate traps, and affect the gameplay in interesting ways. There's 2 playable characters, each with unique equipment, abilities, and spending mechanics. Lastly is The House in Fata Morgana. Now this is technically a limited release as it was a pre-order through Limited Run Games, so I debated including it in here or not, but unlike the other games put out by limited publishers, Limited Run Games had a pretty big hand in getting this out over here on consoles. Their sister company, Mighty Rabbit Games, developed the ports for the PS4 and Vita releases to get them out over here. The House of Fata Morgana is a visual novel that takes place inside a mysterious mansion where the witch Morgana is said to rule. You arrive there without your memories and are greeted by the mysterious maid who guides you through 7 different stories about the different inhabitants of the mansion at various points in time. This is in order to help you discover more about who you are, the truth about the witch, the maid, and how all the past residents fit together. There's a lot here that subverts what we've come to expect from the standard visual novel. The visuals, dialogue, and setting are not the standard anime style that turn a lot of readers off for most of those. Each of the stories plays out more like a tragic play or opera as opposed to the silly, over-the-top anime-inspired writing that this genre is known for. Also, the true ending isn't locked behind a convoluted series of choices that will require multiple full playthroughs. It's pretty easy to get on your first try. This version of the game also includes a number of short stories as extra content helping flesh out the world and characters. So this is one worth checking out if you've been interested in visual novels, but have been turned off by how anime they typically are. So that's a perfect kind of segue into the digital stuff, which we'll get into this year because there wasn't really that much. I mean, there were over 90 titles released digitally this year for the Vita. Most of them, though, are what you'd expect. There was a lot of shovelware, there was a bunch of those Kemco retro RPG mobile ports. There was some notable multi-platform releases here, though they're better on other consoles at this point, so I won't get into most of those. And there's a lot of cross-play PS4 indie titles of varying quality. It's tough to say which are worth checking out because there's not really a lot of reviews for most of them, and obviously as one person I can't get through all of those, but it's worth looking through to see if anything interests you. Let's get into the digital titles then. The first one is Nightcry. This is the kickstarted point-and-click adventure survival horror game that's a spiritual successor to the original 3 Clock Tower games. This is its only console release, which is about 3 years after the original PC version came out. The game takes place on a cruise ship where the passengers are hunted by a mysterious figure with a giant pair of scissors. That should be pretty familiar if you are into Clock Tower. And you control different characters, exploring the ship and nearby island while hiding and fighting back against the Scissor Man and other enemies. The game design, camera, and controls all feel off, likely because the game was designed to work on PC and tablets, though the tablet ports were cancelled. It's also incredibly janky, the performance is pretty rough. It's enough to turn off most players, but the most dedicated and curious Clock Tower fans will find a surprising experience here that does feel like a true callback to the original games. The Vita also got a digital version of Fate Extella Link, which was also released on the Switch and PS4 physically and digitally this year. I'm only mentioning it here because that series started on the PSP and has had a ton of entries on both the PSP and Vita, so if you've been playing that series the whole way through, you might want to continue it here. Next up is Nurse Love Syndrome. This is no longer a console exclusive for the Vita because both this and the previous game were released on the Switch just in December, but since Nurse Love Addiction was a Vita exclusive for over a year, I thought it was worth covering here. Nurse Love Syndrome is actually a port of the first game in the series, which was originally released for the PSP in Japan only in 2011. This release is the first time it's been available in English, and it includes all the additions and updates featured in later releases of that original Japanese game. Nurse Love Syndrome is a Yuri-themed visual novel that takes place in the same world as Nurse Love Addiction, but includes a new cast of characters. The main character, Kaori, is inspired to become a nurse after she survives a near-death experience as a child and wants to help others. Having just graduated from nursing school, she gets a job at a hospital where she can meet and form relationships with other female characters and use her healing powers to help the sick. And if that last part seems off, it's because this isn't a straight nurse story / dating game. It's full of anime style craziness, plot twists, weird moments, and stuff that's pretty intriguing if you enjoy that sort of thing, but if that turns you off, then yeah, definitely not a game for you. Next up is Congo Master Go. Now, this is the only other game I saw that might have been pretty notable as a Vita exclusive, but aside from the name, I can't find any information on if it's actually any different from the other versions of Congo Master, which is a rhythm-based snake-like line-growing game that's available on other platforms. There's the regular Congo Master, there's Congo Master Party for Switch, but I don't know if this has anything unique or different, so it may not be exclusive at all. So that's it for the Vita. I think I'm going to start doing limited run videos, not specifically for limited run games, but for limited run publishers like Limited Run Games, Special Reserve Games, maybe even some of the import games that are very easy to get here now because they're coming out from these publishers. They are still supporting the Vita. I mean, they won't be able to for much longer, but they are, and they put out a ton of great stuff, and you can sometimes find that stuff in different shops and, you know, in used stores, so it's worth knowing about this stuff, but not something that you can just walk into a store or go on Amazon and get. So yeah, we'll get to that stuff eventually. Just to give it a bit of a eulogy, the Vita was a pretty amazing machine for me. I used it to play a lot of visual novels. I discovered a lot of visual novels on it and niche RPGs, and I think it's something I'm going to miss. I find the Switch, even the Switch Lite, to be just a bit too big to bring portably around, and you know, the way the games are designed for TV screens, sometimes the text is too small to read, so I don't find that to be a great replacement, but it's a decent replacement. The regular Switch is a decent replacement for a visual novel player. All the visual novels that would have come out on Vita are also coming out on Switch, so that's probably your move if you've got one. A lot of visual novels have come out on the PS4, and that was something that I was really down on. If you listen to my other retrospectives, I usually prioritize visual novels in the Vita ones, even if they were cross-platform. But now with the remote play, you know, you can still connect to your PS4 with your Vita, and you can play those visual novels on your Vita as long as you're still in your home. Not quite as functional, you know, especially on your phone. They're really small and hard to read those things. But, you know, there's ways to get these things working to still experience new visual novels on your Vita, so that's worth checking out. You know, and the last thing that's kind of made me dive more into visual novels is, you know, a lot of this stuff isn't still coming out for mobile devices. There's a lot of great classics that are only available on PC. And, you know, a Windows tablet is actually a really great way to experience these things. Like, I'm not saying go out and buy a Surface, that's for visual novels, that's crazy. You know, but if you have a little bit of cash lying around, I picked up a cheap Acer tablet, a Windows 10 tablet this year, and I've been playing a bunch of old visual novels on there. You know, like Doki Doki Literature Club, Kawata Shoujo. I just finished Tsukihime, which I've always really wanted to play, and, you know, I'm kind of mixed about how some of that went. But, yeah, that's a great way to check out these visual novels that you can't play anywhere else, so I highly recommend that. Hopefully, you've all found a decent replacement for your Vita, or just keep going strong, checking out those old Vita games. Check out my old retrospectives if you haven't seen them yet to learn about more Vita titles that are worth checking out. And I'm going to finish this series. Actually, yeah, I guess I haven't finished this series completely. I do have a couple more years to go back and do, so I'm going to get those up early this year. And thanks for checking out my video. Yeah, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
It's appreciation time! Reward Mike's hard work by subscribing. Otherwise, we might see you in the next class trial.